Boom, we're live. James, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm looking forward to talking to you. I love your work. I think your work is pretty remarkable. And a lot of people don't talk about what you're doing, which is pretty cool because you've opened this like ancient world that's always been there, but it's like I could see, but I wasn't really seeing. Right? You're looking but not seeing, and I feel with what you're doing and what in your book you kind of open this whole world and open people's minds of how important breathing is. So for people that don't know who you are, have never heard of you, have never seen you, kind of just give them a quick background of who you are, and then we'll go from there.
Sure, I'm a science journalist and an author, and I spent the last several years researching and writing a book about the seemingly mundane and somewhat silly topic of breath, or at least I thought it was a silly topic until you start digging a little deeper into it, and then it reveals a whole different story, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, so let's just get right into it. What was the biggest discovery that you found with breathing?
The biggest discovery that I thought was the most interesting thing was that most of us are breathing incorrectly.
Mhm.
Our respiration is completely messed up from our inability to breathe through our noses to the chronic respiratory problems that afflict the majority of people on this planet. And so just to realize that sort of made me think that there must be a larger story here. Why are we such poor breathers? And what can we
Mm.
do about it? And that was really the genesis of this book idea.
Yeah, why are we bad breathers? Why did we start breathing through our nose, as caveman and cavewoman, and then as we've evolved into modern day, there's a drastic influx of mouth breathers. Why is that specifically?
There's a lot of reasons. The short version is that our faces and our mouths and our noses have dramatically changed in just the last few hundred years. So much so that our teeth grow in crooked. We're the first mammal to have chronically crooked teeth, widespread crooked teeth. How weird is that? None of our ancestors had crooked teeth, and now most of us have crooked teeth. It's because our mouths are too small. Small mouth, more difficulties breathing. And this sounds crazy until all you have to do is look at the skeletal record, and the proof's all over the place.
Hmm. Why did we start breathing out of our mouth from the beginning? Like, what's the origin of mouth breathers?
See, you're a good reporter here. You have to keep asking these questions because that's what I did, and you keep digging, and you end up into some very weird places, and you end up rediscovering things in anthropology. You thought you were writing a book about breathing. What the hell are you doing? Like looking at ancient skulls. So the reasons again, I wish that there was a simple bulleted three bullets. This is why. It's many things. It
Hmm.
mostly has to do with the food supply, but it also has to do with our culture, how we're sitting, our oral posture, the clothes that we're wearing, pollution. Basically, industrialized society has made us the worst breathers of any animal.
I understand. Okay. Uh, so we've established and identified that mouth breathing is bad, nasal breathing is good. What are some of the detrimental health effects of just being a mouth breather? I know a lot of people say, "Oh, he's a mouth breather. Don't talk to him. He's a loser." But what are the detrimental effects of being a mouth breather? And then what are the benefits of only doing nasal breathing?
Mouth breathing is bad for you for numerous reasons. It exposes your lungs to pollution and mold and dust and whatever is in the environment. It makes you much more apt to have periodontal disease because it changes the pH in your mouth, makes it become a lot more acidic, which is a breeding ground for bacteria. It
Mm.
also tends to make you breathe too much and too often, which stimulates a sympathetic response, which is a fight or flight response in your body. It changes the way that your brain functions. We can see all this in studies that have been done for decades and decades. The benefits of nasal breathing is you are slowing down your breathing, you're relaxing your body, you're getting less air, and you're able to use more of that air. So you're breathing more efficiently. And breathing is something we do 20,000, 25,000 times a day. If you're doing it inefficiently, your body is eventually going to break down. That's what we're seeing throughout society right now.
Mm. It's interesting you said that you get more oxygen breathing through your nose, but it feels like you're getting more volume through your mouth.
Volume and efficiency aren't the same thing. So you can eat a lot more food, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a lot more energy from that. If you're eating 5,000 calories a day of junk food, I've seen a lot of
Mhm.
very lazy people eating that. So it depends on how you take in that breath. It depends where that breath comes from. So it's similar to nutrition. Breathing through
Yeah.
the nose is the healthy way of breathing. This is how we're designed. If you were to take an x-ray of a human skull, it's very ornate and complex here in the sinus cavities for a reason. Nature didn't do this by accident. So we release nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, increases circulation, helps with oxygenation. Also, that pressure from breathing through the nose allows us to extract more oxygen with each breath. We get about 20% more oxygen breathing through the nose than we do equivalent breaths through the mouth. If you think that's not going to make a difference throughout the day, during athletic performance, during focus,
Mhm.
you're crazy.
So when I'm on the treadmill and I'm doing like my Tibetan sprints, and I'm doing 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, and I'm keep doing that. After I do about 8 sets of anything, I don't care if you're doing cartwheels, that's a lot. And immediately I want to breathe through my mouth to get more volume. Why is my brain telling me breathe through your mouth to get more volume? Because I've tried just doing pure nasal breathing from your work and other people's work, like Wim Hof and everything. And when my heart is pounding out of my chest, I'm in an extreme emergency state because I just sprinted 8 sets for 20 seconds on and 10 seconds off. Why is my brain telling me get as much volume? But we know that if you do close your mouth, it's difficult because your heart rate is up. Why is breathing through your nose not a signal that your brain's telling you? It's telling you the opposite.
So there's two different things going on here. I'm talking about chronic breathing, habitual breathing, the way
Hmm.
that we're breathing 95% of the time. That should be in and out through the nose, period. When you're at rest, when you're walking, doing zone one, zone two exercise, should be breathing through the nose. There are times when you can breathe through the mouth and it's just fine. Some yoga techniques have you breathing through the mouth. That's cool because you're just doing that a few times at stages 4 and 5. You can use mouth breathing as a tool, a very temporary tool to reset your respiration, get a little more air during those times. If you look at basketball players who know what they're doing, a lot of them right before they dunk, they take this huge breath. Totally fine. So it's not absolute on both of these ends. Yeah, we have a mouth, we can breathe through it. I just breathe a breath through my mouth. When you laugh, when you sigh, you're breathing through your mouth. Who cares? I'm talking about chronic breathing. Now
Hmm.
let's talk about the breathing that you need when you're really exerting yourself. So the body has a much higher demand for oxygen in these states. A lot of people can adapt to just breathe through their noses at these higher states and use more oxygen. So one thing that you can do is put on a pulse oximeter while you're working out. And there's a good chance that your oxygen levels are not going down when you're breathing through your nose at these very high states of stress. What's happening is your CO2 levels are going up. That response to breathe is caused by CO2. It is not caused by oxygen. So once you understand that and you can lift your threshold for CO2, you can go further while breathing through your nose. I want to be very
Hmm.
clear. Everyone's different. And so different people have maybe structural issues with their noses, different tolerances of CO2. So you have to play around with this yourself. But I would suggest getting a pulse ox and looking at your oxygen levels, and you'll be pretty amazed. They tend not to go down too far when we're breathing slowly and we feel like we're struggling for oxygen. We really aren't.
Got so that would be like the optimal. You have to adapt, but the optimal way of like sports performance is still nasal breathing.
The vast majority of time. There are some times when a soccer player is about ready to kick in a goal, you can default to mouth breathing. Who cares? This is a competition. It's for a short amount of time. But
Gotcha.
for most of the exercise that we're doing, for especially zone 3, zone 2, zone 1, you should be breathing through your nose, in and out of your nose. Look at a cheetah running at 70 miles per hour, right? Look at a horse
Yep.
running in a race. Are they ever? No, they're not. And so use nature as your
Yeah.
guide.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what would you say to people that have, like myself, deviated septums, where it is quite difficult to breathe out of their nose? And my dad had the surgery. He said it really didn't even help him, but I've heard some people it did help. So, what's your take on deviated septums and people that really have to like push hard to breathe through their nose consciously?
70% of the modern population has a septum that is clearly deviated to the human eye. So you don't even need to put it into some graph. So a lot of times what people are told is that, oh my God, you have a deviated septum. You have to get this fixed immediately. Well, the vast majority of us are dealing with this problem. I am not a surgeon, so I can't advise a blanket prescription for everybody. Everybody is different. Some people can benefit from surgery. I've heard from a lot of people that the surgery has done nothing, and in some rare cases, it's made things a lot worse. I would suggest, and a responsible ENT and rhinologist would also suggest, start by trying to make yourself a nasal breather. Start by seeing what your natural body can do. Give it a few months. If you're still not getting any progress there, then yeah, go look at some other deeper interventions for this. I would start by becoming a habitual nasal breather. Easier
Mm.
said than done, especially at night. Breathe through your nose, in and out of your nose at night. About 60% of the population does not do this, and it's contributing to a lot of problems.
Can you actually shift without surgery? Could you actually shift yourself from a deviated septum by doing nasal breathing for months, maybe possibly years?
You won't change the structure of your nose, but you will change those different erectile tissues, those different tissues that line your nose. The
Mm.
nose is a use it or lose it organ. So the less you are using it, the more closed off it's going to become. So chronic obstruction leads to more chronic obstruction. I learned about this at Stanford from a breathing researcher down there who was slated for surgery, and she thought something was a little off with this, and she opened up her nose entirely, has zero problems now by just learning how to breathe better. So the one
Mm.
thing I'm going to be clear again, I'm not saying this is going to fix everything for everyone, but you will only get a net gain. You will only get a net benefit from doing this free thing called improving your breathing.
So I heard you've talked on other interviews and doing the research for this episode that as you're developing as a child in the adolescent years, the shape of your jaw, obviously all the model jaw that everybody wants. Now they're getting implants to have that square Superman, Batman jawline. As you're growing up, if you're a mouth breather, you tend to have more narrow face, a long face. Nasal breathers are like the ideal model, perfect square face. Now, for kids growing up that are listening to this, because we have some teenagers, we have a group of teenagers that listen to this. Would you say it's too late to change? And then also, can you change in your 20s, 30s, and 40s the actual bone structure of your face by shifting your breathing?
It's never too late to change, and if anyone tells you otherwise, they're wrong. It's like saying "Oh, it's too late. I can't exercise now. I can't get more healthy. I can't change my diet." That a lot of people use that excuse. I don't think it's a very good one. So, especially when
Mm.
you're still developing, it's much easier to build a better foundation, right? It's harder as you get older when things get more set. But if you're a kid and you're a mouth breather, a lot of kids don't care about their health. They're like, I don't care about my health. I'm young. I'm
Yeah.
fine. But I've spoken at many schools. The one thing that scares them silly is when you say, this is how your face is going to develop if you continue breathing through your mouth. And then you just watch
Hmm.
the whole crowd just shut their mouth. So whatever it takes to get people to do this, this is a huge problem. It's so common. It's called adenoid face. This is what researchers call it. And they use it to describe the facial shape quite similar to mine, that is very long, don't have the Superman jaw, don't have
Yeah.
those prognathic features. And this is how the majority of us have developed. And what's
Mm.
fascinating is that Superman jaw, our ancestors all had it. Okay. They all had these prognathic faces.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Because I have a brother that's 16, and I told him, because he's a mouth breather, and I told him, listen, you got to get this in check. I bought him your book, and then he's reading it now. He's 16. He's in high school. So I definitely want him to get on it. But just to ask the question in a different way, I know you can change your habits, obviously, but can you actually change your bone structure as an adult by breathing for years, or no?
So bone structure's a little tricky. I will mention that you can change the tone of your airway. You can change how those tissues adhere to your airway. You can influence the musculature of your face, and all of these things will improve your breathing. You can influence how the tissues react in your noses. Those erectile tissues that can
Hmm.
dilate or become engorged. So you can affect all of these different things. Bone structure, we're told that when you get to be older, like me, after 30, you just lose bone. And women lose a ton of bone after menopause, which is why
Mm.
osteoporosis is a worldwide problem. But there's one bone in the face that you can actually increase bone density. You can grow more bone, and it is your face. And
Mm.
so by chewing and by doing these things we no longer do in modern society, you can send signals to your body to build more bone in your face. And this sounds crazy, but all you have to do is look at the research. I did a study over the course of a year to see if I could grow more bone in my face. It's supposed to be impossible. And I grew about 4 pennies worth of bone in my face, which is a ton, and other people
Hmm.
have grown a lot more. So it's
Right.
impossible until you look at the data.
So if you want a Superman jawline and you have a narrow Joker face, you possibly can get close.
No, I would not say that. I would not. Okay, I'm going to backtrack. You will be adding on to what you already have, the
Mhm.
foundation of what you already have. The good news is that nature builds in symmetry. Most of us have a face that is slightly off center now. One
Yes.
eye is a little higher than the other, one ear is a little higher. We're a little off center. And when you look at someone else, you identify beauty with symmetry. We've
Hmm.
known this since the Greeks had this figured out, right?
Yep.
So what this allows you to do when you start doing things humans are naturally evolved to do, like chew and building this bone, it's not like you're going to build a bunch of bone on one side of the face. Nature will build it so you become more symmetrical. So I'm not going to say a
Mm.
Joker is going to become a Superman or anything like that, but it
Gotcha.
will only improve what you have. It won't make things worse.
You said chewing specifically. I just want to touch on that. What do you actually mean by chewing?
I mean, masticatory stress. I mean, the thing that our ancestors used to do for 2 to 3 hours a day is they
Mm.
used to chew hard, raw food. How often do we chew nowadays? If you think about the typical American diet, even stuff that's considered healthy, avocados, oatmeal, smoothies, there's no chewing involved. And you need, if you're going to build the muscles in your face, if you're going to help contribute to that new bone growth, you have to chew, and you have to chew a lot because that's what we're designed to do. This is especially important for kids when you're developing, which is why kids who have been breastfed, who ate real food, have that Superman jaw, right? They have this very wide face. Look at the hunter gatherer cultures that are still around. They all had these same amazing features. And we did
Mm.
once too, but we don't chew anymore.
So would you recommend, obviously it's hard. I mean, I guess you could eat harder food or chew on a piece of bubble gum that's rock hard for 6 hours. And then now they have that Jawser size. But would you just recommend that someone just chews longer, even if their brain is telling them to swallow?
Yeah, no bubble gum for 6 hours, everybody. Bad idea. So the easiest thing to do is to do what we have been designed to do, is to eat real food. Okay. Not
Mm.
only are you going to get better nutrition that way, but it's going to cause you to chew a lot. To eat a huge salad, you're going to be chewing that for about 30 minutes, right? 30, 45 minutes to get through a huge bowl of salad.
Mm.
I know a lot of teenagers are like, good luck. There's no way I'm going to eat a bowl of salad. So,
Mhm.
luckily, there are different things you can do. You can get some kinds of gum. Don't get gum with sugar or saccharin or any of that crap in it. There are some types of gum that are very hard that you can chew that have been shown to really have a benefit. Not as
Mm.
much as food, but and there are some devices you can also get that go in the mouth that stimulate that chewing stress. But the best thing is to eat the way humans were designed to eat.
Gotcha. Do you have any brands for gum that you use or you recommend for people that want to jump on Amazon right now?
Yeah, there's this brand of gum called Falim or Falim, I think is how it's pronounced in Turkey. It's this crazy Turkish gum, sugar free. It comes in weirdo flavors like carbonate and mint. I like the sugar free mint type of this gum. They are not paying me to say any of this. So just a heads up. You can buy it on Amazon. I've been buying it for years. It's rock hard. It does not taste very good, but man, does it give a workout to your jaws. Like half an hour, 40 minutes of that, you really feel it. And
Hmm.
I've heard this from so many people, and I believe there's a study booting up very soon with a similar type of gum to show how it will influence facial structure and most importantly, in my opinion, influence the quality of your breathing and help tone those
Hmm.
airways.
Got it. Okay. So chew that specific type of gum, chew longer, more natural food. Don't be a mouth breather. Got it. That's the checklist. My listeners are very like, what do I do?
Okay.
Cool story. Like, how do I
I'm
implement it and become Bradley Cooper and Limitless?
I'm old, so it takes me a while to get to the point. I will add a couple things to what you said.
Well, it's good
Is
to explain stuff too and tell people the origin.
okay. You can cut me off, no problem. But I will. So how you hold your mouth is called oral posture. Not only is mouth breathing bad because all the thing you're just taking in this raw, unfiltered air, but holding your mouth this way, that's what influences how your face is going to grow. Even when you're older, you can have a negative influence on how your face is going to grow. So for so many reasons, you have to shut your mouth. You have to become a nasal breather. If you don't do that, I'm convinced you will never, ever really be healthy. So start with that.
Got it. Okay. What if somebody favors one side? Would you recommend, switching back and forth? You do 10 minutes on your right side and then 10 minutes on your left side?
So just think about, great question. Think about you're chewing a carrot. If you're vegan and if you're a carnivore, you're chewing a big piece of meat, right? How do you chew that meat? Just imagine chewing that. You are never chewing on both sides simultaneously. That's
Hmm.
so awkward. You are always chewing on one side, and then you shift it to the other side, and you're chewing on that side. So when we are clenching our jaws, if anyone's sitting in class right now and clenching your jaw, trying to get chewing stress, that's the wrong stress because that's associated with you're about to fight, you're stressed out. And that sends your body different signals. In order to build bone and have all these benefits I was talking about, you need to be in this parasympathetic state. And that parasympathetic state happens when you're chewing on one side or the other. So,
Hmm.
yeah, you can do, if you want to do interval training with your mouth, that's cool. But naturally, if you're chewing gum, this side will get a little tired. You're going to shift it over here. I would shoot for about a half an hour a day with hard gum. Mastic gum, which is this comes from the sap from these trees in Greece, is also great. It tastes terrible, but it's rock hard and it gives you a good workout.
Excellent. What was the name of that gum again?
It's called mastic gum.
Okay,
And there's various brands of that. I don't care what brand you get of any of this stuff. I'm just giving you the principles and then you can run with that.
for sure. So I knew I was a mouth breather and identified, oh wow, this is bad, especially going through your work and watching, your podcast that you've done. And I was like, okay, well, when I'm unconscious, how can I train myself to close my mouth? I'm sleeping. So I just bought a bunch of mouth tape and I've been using mouth tape for about 8 months. And sometimes if I forget or I fall asleep because I'm watching something and then I'll pass out, I notice when I wake up, my mouth is closed. And I don't know if I really just kind of trained my brain to breathe through the nose, possibly, or subconsciously. But for someone that is, well, first, what's your take on mouth tape in general? And is there any other ways to train yourself to subconsciously breathe through your nose besides just like brute force?
So breathing through your nose during the daytime is easier, right? You're awake, you're conscious, so you can make yourself do it. But what do you do when you go to sleep? Your muscles relax. More than 60% of us breathe through our mouths when we're sleeping. So it's the majority of the population. And it's hard. 100 years ago, 120 years ago, they had chin straps. And these are these big advertisements for chin straps because they said mouth breathing makes you look bad. It makes you unhealthy. And we knew about it then. And it seems like a lot of that messaging has been lost in the last few decades. But to answer your question, yes, I use mouth tape. This sounds insane, but I've talked to so many people, so many researchers who swear by it at leading institutions. When I'm talking about taping your mouth, I'm not talking about a fat strip of duct tape. I'm talking about using a very small piece of surgical tape called micropore tape. It looks just like this. I so happen to have my mouth tape right here.
Okay.
And it just goes on. This is how I do it. Other people do it a different way. That's fine. Goes like this. That's the technology. When you take it off, do not rip it off. Use your tongue. Look, it comes right off. If at night you're stressed out or something happens, it should be able to come right off. This is just a reminder to keep your mouth shut. A lot of people can use this for a couple of weeks, for a couple of months, and then they are no longer mouth breathing at night. You're probably one of them. I am not one of them. I have to use this stuff every single night to keep my mouth shut. And I've been using it for years, but I track my sleep, and there is a pronounced difference between mouth breathing and nasal breathing with sleep quality, snoring, and even some people with sleep apnea have reported a decrease or a completely reversal of their sleep apnea.
The mouth tape that I have, it's in the other room. It's like it's like a smile shape. You put it on. Yeah,
Yep.
it works pretty good. Gotcha.
Works
What's your
great. Whatever works for you. That's the thing. It's that works for you. That's cool. Keep using it.
what's your take on nasal strips that expand? Do you think they're good? I've tried them. I have mixed feelings about them, but what's your take on them?
I think anything that you can use to help make that transition to nasal breathing easier is a good idea. So there are breathe right strips. You see a lot of football players wearing these things.
Mm-hmm.
They just go over the bridge of your nose. Guess what they do? They lift up your nostrils to make it easier to breathe out of your nose. And you have to think about how odd this is that humans are now developing these things to mimic the way we were before we screwed ourselves up. But that's the reality. Our nostrils, many people have nostrils that are too small or that collapse inwards. So those are great. There's also these inserts called mute inserts that they go inside of your nose and they increase airflow about 30%. I've heard, and my experience is those are cool for a couple of weeks, especially at night. They can really help. But after that, once you're acclimated, just like with sports conditioning, you tend not to need them because you know how to breathe and your nose is opened up by them. But everyone's different. Some people may need them for a few months. Some people may need them forever. Some people may need them for a couple of weeks. It just depends on you.
Gotcha. Okay. What diseases have you seen? It could be heart disease, cancer, that obviously there's no absolutes, but the data indicates that by mouth breathing is causing these specific types of diseases. Like, what's the most pronounced disease that people are getting from mouth breathing? And then when they switched over and did pure nasal studies, was there any increase of reducing those?
Yeah, so there are zero studies looking at cancer and cardiovascular disease and mouth breathing. There you can associate certain things with that, but no science. Where the science exists is with chronic respiratory disorders and with anxiety and panic. So with asthma, asthmatics tend to breathe through their mouth. They tend to breathe way more than they need to. Their carbon dioxide levels tend to be much lower than where they should be. And so by training an asthmatic to breathe normally through the nose in this slow pace has been shown to be incredibly effective in reducing the symptoms of asthma and in some miraculous cases reversing it completely. These people no longer have symptoms of asthma. We've been told that asthma is an incurable condition. I have seen some proof that suggests otherwise. The same thing with panic. Panic sufferers, people with anxiety, tend to breathe in the same way as asthmatics. So slow breathing, careful breathing, becoming aware of your breath has been shown to have many benefits to that. If you look at periodontal disease, if you look at sleep disordered breathing, now we can get into increased risk of heart disease. We can get into increased risk of stroke, periodontal disease, increased risk of diabetes. Who knew that
Mm.
how you breathed at night could determine whether or not you get diabetes later on in life? But it's all there. And this is not my research, right? You can look up right
Mhm.
now and look at sleep disordered breathing, sleep apnea, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and more. And you see it's there.
Wow, that's interesting. Have you seen any where people implemented those breathings and it reversed? Do you know the specific time period on when people should see some type of result?
I've seen this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, and the data bears this out in all of these studies I mentioned. And I have 450 studies available on my website for free for anyone who wants to look this up themselves. So asthma is usually asthmatics, once they're taught how to breathe, everyone's different again. So I can't
Right.
say that this works in the same way for everybody, but it's pretty instantaneous. The improvement,
Mm.
panic the same way. For periodontal disease, that takes a lot longer for the body to restore itself. And if you're looking at sleep disordered breathing and sleep apnea, they know once sleep apnea is stopped, if sleep apnea is the root cause to these problems, those problems tend to go away pretty quickly because that's what's causing them. And it's so sad to see that 80% of people with moderate to severe sleep apnea are undiagnosed. They don't know
Mm.
why they have all these problems, why they're getting sicker and sicker. It's because they're choking on themselves every single night.
Mm. With people that are using CPAP machines, if they converted to nasal breathing, do you think that the CPAP machine industry would just go out of business over time?
It depends what is causing their sleep apnea. Okay. If someone is 600 pounds, then I don't think any amount of healthy breathing is going to help that person
Mm.
improve their sleep apnea at all. So it really depends on what is the core issue. With sleep apnea is tricky because it can be structural, it can be mental. There are different forms of sleep apnea. It can occur in different parts of the airway. So again, you have to identify where is the root problem. To be clear, CPAPs work wonders. They've saved innumerable lives. Are they helping to cure sleep apnea? No. What they're doing is they're a band-aid, a really effective band-aid for a situation. But when you stop using your CPAP, your apnea comes back. So I'm more interested, or I have been, is talking to the scientists who are trying to understand the core problem of sleep apnea and a permanent and durable fix to get these people to breathe normally without wearing a terrestrial scuba mask every night.
Absolutely. I've heard on some of your other previous podcasts and episodes that you talked about EPO and how you can actually increase your natural EPO versus someone like, everyone knows famously or infamously Lance Armstrong for taking EPO and then getting taken out of the record books for increasing endurance and all these things, injecting EPO, which increases your red blood cells and all this stuff, right? What is the correlation with nasal breathing and increase of EPO? And is there specific, like, I guess, exercises that someone can do if they want to increase their natural EPO and have a better endurance, whether they're an athlete or whatever?
So a lot of athletes go to altitude to build blood, right? That's a pretty standard thing. You go to
Mm.
6,000, 7,000, 8,000 feet, you work out for weeks or months to build more blood. So then when you come back down to sea level, you have more capacity to carry more oxygen. More oxygen is more energy. So Lance Armstrong was doing this. He was cheating. He was just injecting it EPO to build more blood.
Mm.
But there have been studies, and this is fascinating, that you can mimic the effects of altitude training by controlling your breath. This takes some doing. You really need a coach to do this. So, hypoventilation training, which is under breathing training, breath holds are very good for this. And this is when you force yourself to breathe just below your metabolic needs, and you train this way. And I've done it. It sucks. It's really difficult because your survival instinct keeps saying, "What are you doing? You need to breathe now. You need to breathe a lot." And you're trying to turn that off. But the effects and the improvement that athletes get from this is really pronounced, and this is becoming a really big field of research for cardiovascular disease, for weight loss. You will lose more weight through this hypoventilation training than you will otherwise. And it's interesting to use these different hacks and breathing mess with your metabolic needs and to trigger these different effects. So that's what that is, and that's why it's
Mm.
related to EPO and building blood.
If somebody wanted to learn more about that, or actually do it, but they don't have a coach, would you just recommend go on YouTube? Is there any specific people that have a channel that they're experts?
Yeah, Anders Olsen is a real expert in this world. Patrick McEwen at Oxygen Advantage. If anyone's a real go-getter, high-performance person that wants to jump up that next rung of potential, I've talked to some of the people that he has trained, Olympians,
Mm.
special forces across the board, and it can have a huge difference to performance and recovery. And a lot of what he does is breath control and that under breathing. So those are two really good sources. Xavier Warrens at Paris 13 University has done this work for the past 20 years, and he's a good person to look up as well.
Gotcha. Okay. So go to those different channels. If you don't have a coach or you can't pay a coach, you can go to them specifically. Awesome, man. What is your take on Wim Hof breathing and his whole thing? Are you a fan of it, or it's okay to you? Or what's your take on his specific type of breathing? And do you think every athlete, or you think most athletes should be implementing that to get stronger or faster or whatnot?
I think Wim has done more to bring breathing awareness and the potential of breathing to the mass public than anyone else in the past 50, 60 years. I really
Mm.
do. I think he's such an inspiring character. He's the first person to acknowledge, I've talked with him several times. He's like, this is not new stuff. They call it the Wim Hof method, but it's been
Yeah.
around for thousands. Talk to a Tumo monk about the Wim Hof method. He's like, yeah, it's called Tumo. We've been doing this for thousands of years. That's not to belittle what he's doing. He's getting the word out to people who wouldn't know about it otherwise. So it's extremely effective. The science shows that. I'm a big fan of these forced hyperventilation training methods. What they do is they purposely stress your body out for a very short amount of time so that you don't carry that stress throughout the day, which is what most of us do, right? It's like working out. It's you're focusing that amount, you're building those muscles of breathing
Mm.
and conditioning yourself so that the rest of the time you can breathe normally. So you can call it Wim Hof method, you could call it Sudarshan Kriya, Kundalini, Pranayama. They're all doing the same thing.
With the Wim Hof method and also with the increase EPO naturally method, what's the results in the tests that have came back on brain performance? Because a lot of people think about physical performance being faster, being more athletic, but what about being smarter and increasing your oxygen to the brain? Has that been as drastic as physical performance?
So anyone who thinks they're getting more oxygen to the brain by over breathing is wrong. What is happening is you are having the exact opposite effect. Right now, you take about 20, 30 big breaths, you're going to feel lightheaded. Why do you feel lightheaded? Because you are getting the circulation is slowing down to the brain, which is also why your hands and feet may go numb or feel cold. So when you overbreathe, you inhibit circulation. When you breathe in line with your metabolic needs, that circulation increases, which is why slow breathing helps to heat the body up and deliver more blood to the brain. We also know there was a study done at Northwestern about 3 or 4 years ago that showed that breathing through the nose in a rhythmic pattern helps align different sections of the brain to allow you to think more clearly. The different brain waves come into coherence. So this is so effective for focused tasks, is to have your breath slow and rhythmic. And we can see this with EEG studies and other studies that are all available on the site.
So you'd recommend anyone that's doing some form of deep work, shout out to Cal Newport, any type of deep work, that slow breathing. And maybe that's why meditation is so effective, because day one of meditation class, they talk about what? Breathing.
Meditation is breathing. The benefits you get from meditation for the first 6 months to a year, I would argue, are from breathing. I don't know any meditation that you can sit there and mouth breathe. And the first thing you do is slow everything down. How do you slow everything down? You slow it by breathing more slowly. So
Mm,
breathing is this thing that you can slow it down to elicit different reactions in your body. You can speed it up to elicit different reactions. You can breathe less, you can breathe more. So all of these different things you can use depending on what you need your breath to do for you at that moment.
gotcha. Okay. So if you want to be super genius, highest level intellect, slow breathing, and maybe implement some meditation.
Slow rhythmic breathing is going to be the most efficient way to provide fuel for your brain to do what it needs to do.
When you say rhythmic breathing, do you mean like box breathing, or what does that
You
specifically
can
mean?
do you can do box breathing if you want. It needs to be in a rhythm. When you're breathing is most people when they sit down at their computer, answer their email, guess what they do? They hold their breath and then they go. There's no pattern to it, right? You're stopping,
Mm,
you're starting, you're breathing in longer than you're breathing out, and then you flip that. So, by allowing yourself to come into a natural rhythm, whether that's an inhale to 3 or 4, or you can do it longer to 5 or 6, and an exhale for that same amount, but that natural rhythm puts your body at ease and allows it to better do what it's designed to do. There's various apps that do this that has a little sound that goes boo. So you don't have to look at your phone. And when I get stressed out, I put my phone on my desk and I breathe along with that as I answer 400 extremely boring and irritating emails. And it really helps you get through these tasks.
what's the name of the app that you use?
I'm on Android. The one I used is called Paced Breathing. It's got the worst UX you've ever seen, but I'm not looking at for good design. I'm looking for something that is very simple and that works. And you know what? Since I have you here, here it is. It's got UX from 1997. That's the sound it makes. You don't need a bunch of bells and whistles. I'm putting this thing on my desk to just breathe
Perfect.
along with it. So yeah, this looks like, Web 1.0 DOS situation, but it
Mhm.
it works great for me. There are dozens of other breathing apps that do the similar thing. I would suggest getting an app where you can program your own time into it, and I like 6 seconds in,
Mm.
6 seconds out.
Well, breathing is human 1.0, so I guess everything comes full circle, right?
There you go. Maybe the lo-fi version is better for us.
Possibly. Well, James, I appreciate your time coming on the show. I think a lot of people are going to extract a lot of knowledge and information of what you've researched and what you said and implement it into their life. And I think you're going to help a lot of people. You're going to help the old generation, the mid-range generation, and I really think you're going to impact the younger generation. Reversing mouth breathing into nasal breathing. What's on the horizon for you now, and how do people reach out to you if they want to learn more from you?
I am at mrjamesnestor.com. That's at mrjamesnestor.com. There are breathing exercises. It's all free. There's no paywall or anything like that. Free interviews, all the scientific references. I'm also trying to get better at this thing called Instagram, which is for an older person is so frustrating, at mrjamesnestor.com or just Mr. James Nestor. I'm working on a few different projects right now, fun stuff. I'm excited to go back into my mole hole in the backyard for the next couple of years and just slave away on some more research.
Got you. Not related to breathing, something completely different.
I think if I was a smart business person, I'd come out with breathe deeper or breath too, but I'm not. No, this is my book on breathing. I put everything I had into this thing. If
Got
that's,
you.
that
Yeah,
it is what it is, and I'm moving on to something else.
I understand. All right. Well, I appreciate you on the show. And that's it, guys. So, again, in the show description below, you'll see all of James's links. If you want to reach out to him, if you want to contact him, if you want to buy his book, all the links will be down there. James, I appreciate you. And this is the Justin Caviar Show. We are out. Bye bye, y'all.